which means what? Black folks. But you never find a white aborigine. Rather, aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark-skinned people. You and I are aborigines, but you don't like to be called an aborigine. You want to be called an American. Aborigine actually means from the beginning. Two Latin words. Ab meaning from, origine meaning the beginning.
African Americans, or so-called Negro. One of the reasons that it is bad for us to continue to just refer to ourselves as so-called Negro, that's negative. When we say so-called Negro, that's pointing out what we aren't, but it isn't telling us what we are. We are African, and we happen to be in America. We're not American. We are people who formerly were Africans who were kidnapped and brought to America. Our forefathers weren't the Pilgrims. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock was landed on us. We were brought here against our will. We were not brought here to be made citizens. We were not brought here to enjoy the constitutional gifts that they speak so beautifully about today. And because we weren't brought here to be made citizens today, now that we've become awakened to some degree and we begin to ask for those things which they say are supposedly for Americans, they look upon us with hostility and unfriendliness. So our unwanted presence, the fact that we are unwanted, is becoming magnified in all of America's preachments today.
You got me. Keeping it real.
What it do? This is your brother Bishop of Bishop's Zone TV. And today, man, I got to address once again the Aborigine Turtle Islander Indigenous Pretendian movement. Now, plenty of people before me have debunked this movement time and time again. And they have done a far better job of in-depth expose on these delusional Negroes. So why am I addressing this demographic once again? Well, simply put, there is so much misinformation out there, so much delusional, culturally insecure people out there that I just got to combat that with the facts and just simple logic. Because we need more of this type of content than the misinformation circulating around there. Now, the title of this video is called "The Problem with the Aborigine Movement." In quotes, movement. Now, this is one thing I've noticed with pretty much the majority of the people pushing this rhetoric. From danecalloway to Chief Sekou Hadjo Gentle, which, and I don't care if I said that wrong because this dude is wrong in general, which, by the way, the name Sekou is of African origin. Yet he makes it a point to let us know that most so-called Black Americans do not come from Africa. But okay, that's a topic for another day, whatever. Also, we got to talk about the legendary Top Cats, the Aboriginal global media, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these colorful, ignorant ass Negroes pushing this rhetoric that they are the Aborigine movement. They are Aborigine people. We were already here. And I got to speak about this because there's a common pattern with how they choose to present information to the general public. I want you to notice this anytime you watch one of the videos. Generally, when they're presenting some so-called new evidence, it's largely filler information. Filler information, Let me say that again. Filler, aka nothing burger information. And generally, when they're presenting this information, it has nothing to do with the topic at hand. Listen to these people. I'm not telling y'all. I'm telling y'all to go to their channels and listen to their videos. A lot of it is nothing that has anything to do with the topic at hand. They throw in uncommon vocabulary words in their empty rhetoric rants because they want to give the illusion to y'all that they're more knowledgeable than they really are. A lot of their talking points are long-winded and never get straight to the point. Then, and only then, after they've taken you around and around the world, then they finally somewhat address the bold claim that we've been lied to and that we were already here. But in doing this, they don't actually provide concrete evidence. Instead, what they try to do is debunk the accepted and historically factual history that so-called Black Americans or African Americans are descendants of primarily enslaved West and West Central Africans. Which, again, let me reiterate, that is the historical fact that African Americans or Black people, whatever you want to call us, are primarily descendants of enslaved West and West Central Africans. Now, I find that particularly odd that they focus on trying to debunk the historical information instead of trying to actually focus more on providing evidence to their claims. If you're going to sit up there and say that we are Aborigine Americans, then the burden of proof is on you, not us, because that's the accepted theory, which is not a theory. It's a historical fact that we are descendants of West Africans and West Central African ethnicities. But y'all are coming with the bold claim that we are not and we be lied to, yet you never provide concrete evidence. So-called debunking the notion that we are West and West Central Africans and that we were brought here through the transatlantic slave trade, debunking that is not providing evidence that we were Aborigine Americans. You have to focus on that first. Now I'm going to tell y'all their strategy. And what it really boils down to is this. And this is elementary at its best. I'm telling you, it's elementary and shallow as fuck, but just this is what they present. And this is the pattern that they follow. Their basis of claim revolves around using pictures and illustrations to make the claim that we were already here. Yes, they use pictures, and they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and illustrations to make the claim that we were already here. Because, if you just look at these pictures, that's all the proof you need. You don't need any archaeological evidence. You don't need any scientific evidence. And you damn sure don't need any genealogical evidence. All you need to do is look at these pictures of these dark-skinned indigenous people and talk to your grandmama. That's all you need. Your grandmama and your own set of eyes. That's all you need. That's what these Negroes pretty much do. That's the gist of their strategy to show proof that, hey, we are Aboriginal people. We were already here. Matter of fact, they generally encourage you to not take a DNA test. Yes, they would tell you to avoid it at all costs because that's the white man's science. Even though they contradict themselves when they criticize opposers for using genetics, aka white science, yet they'll use European maritime explorers' historical accounts as proof as to why they were already here. Never mind the fact that these are nothing but pure misinterpretations of these explorers' accounts of encountering other groups of people. And on top of that, these explorers that they like to, hide behind, they were not genealogists. They were not scientists. They were not linguists or historians. They were explorers. So now that I got that out the way, let me play a couple of their videos and break down the foolishness of this shit. It's quite comical, but sad at the same time. So y'all just sit back and let's break this shit down and have some good times with these dumbasses And yeah, let's go.
Man, I want to see what next week.
Yeah.
Where I'm from, everybody they grandparents and stuff be like Indians and shit.
Indians.
Native American with their long pretty hair, their curly shit.
What you think she'll be? Yoruba or Igbo?
Yoruba girl, boss it.
Yoruba?
Yeah.
What the?
Tolu?
Yeah.
Your ancestry?
You know how to do this stuff?
I never did it.
Man, I want to see what I'm mixed with.
Yeah.
Where I'm from, everybody they grandparents and stuff be like Indians and shit.
Okay, I'm trying to be as respectful as possible, even if I strongly disagree with these people and think they grifters. But god damn, I ain't taking you serious when you quoting Sexy Red. This is Miss My Booty Hole Brown. You supposed to be some type of scholar. You're trying to present yourself as a scholar and you're quoting Sexy Red. My booty hole brown. Downtown, pound town. Fuck out of here. Fuck out of here. This is legendary Top Cats, which is a cartoon anyway, like Hanna-Barbera cartoon. He calls himself Top Cats. Like, seriously. I'm supposed to take you serious with this type of shit right here? When you quoting Sexy Red? This is what they do. Even danecalloway putting up Chingy. And I'm not saying Chingy is a dumbass or anything like that, but like, come on now. Your scholarship, this is really what it is. This is no different than Hillary Clinton impressing black folks because she says she keep a pack of hot sauce in her pocket. Get fucking serious, y'all. Get fucking serious.
Over the tribes, this would birth the 5 civilized tribes. As the U.S. expands, the mixed race tribes will sign false treaties, traditionally board the culture and customs, hunting, tracking, and food. Soul food, that is. And white Southern culture is called Southern cooking, which is Southeastern Indians' cultural food, also referencing Charles Hudson, the book published.
Now, I want y'all to notice something. In that video I just showed, that's legendary Top Cats talking. And he references Charles Hudson, who wrote a book called The Southeastern Indians. He references as a legitimate claim as to the influence of Southeast Indians, aka in Top Cat's vocabulary, his stance, which is us, Black Americans, but he's referencing Charles M. Hudson. Yet on the cover of this book, these people clearly look like the so-called $5 Indians, which is the ones with quote unquote Mongoloid features, which is wrong anyway. Mongoloid features or whatever they like to, which is the real indigenous people, by the way. But they like to claim that these are the fake $5 Indians. But he's referencing this book. And this book is not claiming that Black Americans are the real indigenous people. Charles Hudson also is a white man. So again, they would try to disprove science because a white man came up with genetics. They would try to disprove DNA testing because a white man, but then he would use a white man as a reference that has nothing to do with what he's trying to claim, which is Black Americans are Aborigines. Yet on this cover, as you can see, that doesn't look like a black person to me. You gonna tell me that look like a light-skinned woman, I guess? No. And I know you could barely probably see that, but just purchase the book if you want to learn something about Southeastern indigenous people. And you will see on the cover that these people do not look like black folks. All right? Yet this is his reference. And where's this nigga from? This nigga from Dallas or somewhere. Shouts out to my D-Town folks, but goddamn. This is y'all leader? Really? Come on.
We go to the Slave Trade Voyages website, we can see an estimate of over 12 million slaves from Africa and an estimate in the inter-American slave trade of over 600,000. Yet they use the word imputed. And what does that mean? It means assigned to something by inference from the value of the products or processes to which it contributes. Estimated. So these are estimates and inferences. When we go to the actual...
Now, remember when I told y'all about filler information? Because what the fuck does imputed have to do with anything in this topic? Huh? You see, he's stalling. He has nothing. He has nothing to prove. This is clearly a stalling tactic. We don't need to know the definition of imputed. Just get to the information that you're trying to claim. Okay? Can you prove what you're claiming? Can you do that? Forget about the definition of imputed. Can you do that? God damn.
Voyages, we notice in the next to last column that some of the ships had no captives. This is a close-up of it. So what was on the ships that travel all the way across the Atlantic? We see the very same thing for the intra-American voyages. No captives on ships that were traveling. They were not carrying slaves, they were carrying commodities. When we get to the data variables, we see that embarkments were only over 8,000 for Africa. Disembarkments at 18,000. This is the intra-American real data variables, and we see 7,000 embarked and about 22,000 disembarked. So what are we witnessing here? What we have here is a time lapse of the ships. Over 20-some thousand ships in the intra-American, and there were over 36,000 from Africa. Yet, when we calculate the data from embarkments, the actual data, what we find out is that the numbers only reach about 16,000 actual data embarkments. And if we count the disembarkments, we get about 40,000 in the slave trade. All of the ships that are listed with no captives that travel across the waters, what do you think they were carrying? Why would you travel from London to Africa all the way across the Atlantic with no captives? This is their data. This is not me making this up. And so what we have here is a very deceptive inference, estimated, imputed system of trying to hide something. And what are they trying to hide? You're looking at it in the time lapse. Indigenous people were taken from South Carolina into Cuba, from the Carolinas and Virginia into Jamaica, from Jamaica back into the States, from Brazil into the North American continent, from the North American continent back into Mexico. In fact, the slave trade started with Americans being taken from America back to Europe and Africa.
Dun, dun, dun. Oh, gee willikers. So let me get this straight. So no captives means indigenous people? No captives means indigenous people. And they conveniently are hiding this information on a database that they created. They created this database and then went out their way to hide the fact that the no captives were indigenous. Sir, how did you come up with the fact that no captives translates to indigenous people? Based on what? Based on what? Like, come on. Based on what, man? What are you basing this shit off of? Off of what? How did you come up with that conclusion? Because you didn't provide any in this video right here. You didn't say these were indigenous people based on documentation, based on journals by the captains. I mean, goddamn, which one is it? Are they telling the truth or are they hiding the facts? They're conveniently hiding the fact when it comes to quote unquote indigenous, even though I don't even see how you came up with that claim. It just says no captives. They have nothing to record. It makes sense when you look at it from a historical perspective because we were not there. So they can only make an estimate based off the evidence that they actually do have, which is why they have all this information to begin with, because they actually have this information at hand. But they can't come up with a goddamn assumption like you just did. You did a whole goddamn 360, 8,500, whatever the fuck, to come up with this theory that no captives translates to indigenous people. No information provided, nothing to back up this claim. You just came up with that out of thin goddamn air because what? They have to be hiding it. They don't want you to know the truth. That's the only reason why you came up with that, because, oh, it's nothing there. So that means I'm interpreting that as they don't want us to know what it was. What are they up to? Why are they not telling us? Sir, that's not proof. That's not proof. Even when you see the information that they do have, they have majority of the database has dates, have places where they were purchased from and where they were brought to. They have names of captains that you can look this shit up. They have names of the ships. So you're telling me that that's a lie. But they made sure to hide the truth from you. Man, get the fuck out of here with this mental gymnastics bullshit. Come on, man.
And so we wrote the book, They Lied About the Slave Trade, so that you could get this information and not have to go by estimates, inferences, or something being imputed to you. They listed the real data on the very same website that they lied on.
And that's it right there. They're selling books. They're grifters, and they want you to purchase their books to find out the true, quote unquote, true information. And what is it? Goddamn. He says they put real information, true information, but then they're telling lies behind it. I mean, which one is it, man? Which one is it? This is what I'm talking about, man. The mental gymnastics with these people. But hey, if you want to learn actual facts, no estimates, I can tell you exactly what the numbers are, because even though I wasn't there, even though I wasn't born then, I can tell you the exact numbers. But you got to purchase my book. Even though you can look on the database for free. You don't have to purchase an account to look this information up. But if you want to look up his information, you do have to purchase the book. You have to spend money to do that. Come on, y'all. Y'all don't see this shit? Y'all don't see this shit?
And I'm sorry, I'm driving too. And the story that they told us, and one thing I don't understand is how, unless, I don't know how the scholars, these so-called scholars, couldn't figure this shit out. We got many people in the healthcare field that could have looked at this story that they told us and said, no, that couldn't have happened. But nobody said anything about this story and critiqued this story and say, no, something is off about this story. Because listen, they told us that we came over here on the bottom of a boat. They didn't tell us it was a 3-month journey. We thinking that it was a couple-day journey. You know, it was a 3 to 4 month journey.
No, ma'am. No. You thought it was 3 to 4 day journey. You thought it was a 3 to 4 day journey. Anybody with common goddamn sense can tell you that crossing the Atlantic Ocean is going to take longer than 3 to 4 days, especially during that time. But your dumb ass, your loud and wrong and arrogant ass thought it was a couple of days. And so now we've been lied to, because I thought it was a couple of days. They told us. I was thinking it was a couple of days journey. Wow. Okay. Let's continue with this shit, because she's going to continue to be loud and wrong. Trust me.
And they say they had us packed like sardines. We didn't move for 3 months, but now they saying that they let some of us come up and they rotated us out, whatever. So they claiming they had us packed like sardines in the bottom of a boat. So we pissing and we defecating on each other. Okay. A 3-month journey. And let me tell you, I used to be into Pan-Africanism. And I remember I would be looking at videos on YouTube, and there was a guy on YouTube. His name is Kerry Davis. African Americans Ain't African. That's his webpage. But anyway, I kept seeing this man pop up talking about Black Americans is not African.
All right, so let's look at a small clip of the Negro she is referring to that just opened her eyes to who we, quote unquote, truly are. Take a look.
Santa Claus. Here, that's an example, a perfect example. We're told about Santa Claus when we're kids. Our parents tell us this. They lie to us. But when you ask a question, well, how come Santa Claus's clothes never get dirty? In California, they put cotton on their roof and on their grass so they can simulate snow. California's a desert. It doesn't snow there. But the mental capacity that we're in will do anything to keep the charade going.
Now, this is who she's referencing. This Negro right here. First of all, I don't even trust this dude the way he's dressed. Look at him. I don't trust no Negro to come up with rolled up sleeves and his chest hair showing. And you show up like this to a lecture. And second of all, you talk about some goddamn Santa Claus. This is how he opens up his lecture. Some Santa Claus. It's a room full of adults. I think we all understand that Santa Claus is not real. He has nothing to talk about. He has nothing to offer. This is what I'm talking about. Filler information. And he's from California, by the way. And he makes an incorrect statement. He says California is a desert and it doesn't snow. Now, we know in Southern California, it doesn't snow. We understand. He's stating the goddamn obvious. For whatever reason, I don't know. Like, nobody's questioning fake snow in Southern California. But California is not a desert. They have deserts, but it's not a damn desert. California is a Mediterranean type environment. It's a Mediterranean type environment, which is not a goddamn desert. And it does snow. It snows in Northern California. Above the Bay Area, it snows. You can look at mountains in California and see snow on top of the mountains. What is he talking about? And he's from California. He clearly, rarely, if any time has left Compton, which I think that's where he's from. Shouts out to Compton, no disrespect, don't be tripping on me. But this nigga don't know what he's talking about. And she don't know what he's talking about. Which, by the way, she is claiming she's not African anymore. We were already here, but she got a goddamn kente cloth on the top of her head. This is the idiocracy of it all. This is what I'm talking about, y'all. She got a goddamn kente cloth on the top of her forehead. But she talking about she not African. Well, take that shit off then. Put your tribal roots on. Put your tribal garb on. If you're not African, niggas just be talking just to be talking. Don't know what they mad about. They just talking just to be talking. Now look, this is my final conclusion to all this. There's multiple reasons why so many of our people alienate themselves from their African lineage. We talking American public school system. It ain't been the best. It ain't necessarily benefited black people when it comes to an historical perspective. We can go on about that. It's very Eurocentric. It's very whitewash. And so that leaves the door open for people to not trust the hierarchy in American society. Also, generations upon generations upon generations of de-Africanizing our ancestors, which now leaves us, the descendants, at a crossroad or suffering from a cultural identification syndrome, basically. A lot of us are fucked up. And that's a result of slavery. A lot of us have issues identifying ourselves with an African state of mind. That was intentionally done by our ancestors' oppressors. That's a fact. They dehumanized us and de-Africanized us. They stripped us of our African identity and culture. And by a certain point in time in the 18th and 19th century, some of our ancestors, I'm talking the grandchildren and the children of those who came directly from Africa, so in the early 1800s, intentionally detached themselves from Africa. A lot of these people were freed Africans. I'm calling them Africans in the context because they are Africans, but they were freed people. They were freed people. A significant amount were mixed blood, and they were pushing to be American citizens. And so in order for them to do so, they felt that they needed to de-Africanize their identity. Many felt like they had no attachments to Africa because they were born in America. This was a sentiment shared by a significant amount of people. One of the biggest proponents of that was Frederick Douglass. He made it a point to emphasize on the fact that we were American citizens and not Africans. Now, I disagree with Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass happened to be a mixed blood, according to Frederick Douglass, right? Which that could have played a part in how he saw himself. But in all their rhetoric, in all of Frederick Douglass' rhetoric, and those who supported his idea of staying in America, this was during the time where they opposed the American Colonization Society, they never once made the argument that we don't need to go to Africa. We're not African because we were already here. They never said that. Frederick Douglass never said that in any of his speeches, that we were already here. We were here before the Europeans arrived in America. They never said that. Martin Delany, he was a Pan-Africanist. He identified as an African. Many people that supported Martin Delany also identified as Africans around the same time, that opposed Frederick Douglass, who wanted to assimilate into the dominant society, which were white people. That's why he gained partnership with white abolitionists. But Martin Delany never detached himself from Africa because he heard stories from his grandparents that they came from Africa and how Africa was prior to the Europeans taking them and shipping them to the Americas, the New World, quote unquote. And all of these historical accounts, these documentations, even going back to colonial Louisiana, where there were actual trials taking place in colonial Louisiana, and on paper, actual documentation that can be found in Louisiana courts to this day, you see enslaved Africans identifying as their specific ethnicity of origin from Africa. You don't have to misinterpret it. You don't have to read between the lines because they're trying to hide the fact. It's right there. It's right there. And I honestly believe, and this is why I have this picture right here, that a lot of our people, the gist of it all is that this is a syndrome of post-traumatic slave syndrome. If you look at some of the behavior of Black Americans post-emancipation, a lot of it looks similar to PTSD. And there's been studies, one in particular, which can be found on the National Library of Medicine site, one of the largest databases, by the way, of scientific studies and literature, which talks about false memory and psychopathology. And in their review, they suggest that individuals with PTSD, a history of trauma, or depression are at risk for producing false memories when they're exposed to information that is related to their knowledge base. Now, that bit of information is dealing specifically with PTSD. But if post-traumatic slave syndrome deals with some of the similarities of PTSD, wouldn't false memory manifest itself in post-traumatic slave syndrome a little bit different, more so akin to our experiences as descendants of enslaved Africans and West Africans? Wouldn't it be fair to say that to cope with the trauma of being enslaved and treated less than a dog, wouldn't it benefit the descendants of those slaves to create false memories that we weren't actually slaves? That we were Indians or Hebrew Israelites or Moors or whatever the fuck you want to call yourself now? Because in their minds, to believe one was enslaved is to keep us depressed, is to keep us down. If you knew who you truly were, you would be proud of yourself. To believe one was already his to gain a false sense of confidence and pride in self. If you were reminded that you were enslaved, then there's no pride in that. There's no confidence in being a slave. People are lying to themselves. They're lying to themselves to cope with the trauma of slavery. And that's the reality of the situation. That is my personal belief, that we are suffering in large mass from post-traumatic slave syndrome, and this is a coping mechanism to deal with that. But the fact is that we are descendants of West Africans and West Central Africans. And no matter how much you try to escape it, no matter how much you try to lie to yourself, nigga, you're African. So fuck out of here and get with the goddamn program, nigga. All right? And I'm only calling y'all niggas because y'all act like some niggas. Y'all need to graduate to an African like me. All right? So with that said, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you got any problems with what I said, then leave a comment so I can address it. I can address it properly. Till next time, holla.